Well, good evening, Internet. We are back after a long hiatus. Chris and Kent are coming at you with Kenter at Your Own Risk. This is going to be episode 18. We are recording it in April of 2020, and it's been a while. I've missed my buddy Kent. We haven't talked since like October of last year, or at least on a podcast. So I hope everything's going good with him. I know we've both been busy in our personal lives, so we're finally getting an opportunity to get back together and get back into this. How are you doing?
I'm having like a serious case of deja vu right at the moment, but doing okay. The struggle is a little real at the moment, but so far so good.
I know that there's been a ton of stuff going on in, our ballywick, as you were, since the last time we've talked, but I think that probably the scariest thing going on is the shit going on in real life. So I hope that the 6 of you who listen to this are all doing okay, and that there's still 6 of you listening to this in a couple months from now.
It's interesting because every I think it's every week I get an update on people that listen to us, and it's just weird that it's been almost 6 months here, and we're almost halfway to Halloween, and it is kind of funny that people are still so bored that they come back. So kudos to you, bored people.
Thank you guys for keeping us busy. So, anyways, to try to get back to what I was just discussing with Ken a minute ago, lots of stuff has gone on, but the last time we got together, he gave me a movie to watch, which was the original Suspiria. I finally watched it, and I can definitely say that it was better than most of the old movies that Kent gives me to watch for this podcast. It wasn't perfect by any means, but I can understand why people consider it an iconic classic. Between the score and the use of color and the cinematography, really good. A lot of it still holds up. On the other hand, you can definitely see where it's a European movie and that the acting and directing are definitely different than what you would come to expect from a typical horror movie of the period. Although, not by much, let me say. I enjoyed it. I don't think I would ever go back and rewatch it, but I'm glad I've seen it at least once. Oh, and the ending was definitely pretty abrupt.
That ending, that's just something to do with, and horror itself has weird endings. God damn, that's a conversation to have someday. But yeah, I agree. The ending was abrupt, and for all the things you mentioned, yeah, I mean it's a movie that I enjoyed, and I get why it was so hyped up. I can only imagine like living in the 70s and seeing that, and god damn, that probably would have been quite the experience back then, I imagine, right?
Definitely, if you compare it to some of the stuff that was in American cinemas at the time, it was graphic in some ways. There were definitely more graphic movies coming out in America, but those were almost, made for their shockploitation factor, I guess.
It's interesting, like, gosh, if I could go in a time machine, one of the eras I'd go back to is the 70s, because the 70s horror, like, there was just that was like the decade that kind of brought horror back, because I don't know, horror wasn't doing that good, and then 70s kind of brought it back, and then the 80s mounted it several times and resuscitated the hell out of the genre.
Well, I think part of that is because the 60s weren't necessarily like the greatest decade, but if you look back on, like, say, from the World War II to the 2000s, it's regarded as, one of the most positive, I guess, decades. So when everybody's happy, tripping, what have you, it's a lot harder to be negative and focus on the scary what ifs compared to love, peace, all of that. Just my 2 cents. I wasn't around for it, so who the fuck knows?
That makes a lot of sense, and that also kind of helps to illustrate why certain films in the 70s became such huge successes. it was just such a stark contrast.
Yeah, you had the idealism of the '60s followed by the cynicism of the '70s. So everything was nihilistic, negative. All the things that people had thought were building towards didn't happen, and now gas crisis, economic crisis. So yeah, it's easy to go into the. I mean, I'm imagining that the next couple of years we're going to have a big boom in horror movies coming out as people try to at least work through their negative issues over the last couple of months, years.
Oh, I can. I mean, in my head, I already have like so many things, but a lot's like a mixture of horror and comedy because that's kind of what my brain goes to. Is a little. I always have a little comedy in my horror, and yeah, I can only imagine. Unlike 9/11, that's that gave us a few movies. This is like such a long period of time that people are just sitting home like, I ain't got nothing better to do. Let me write a friggin' film, and we're gonna get a glut of decent horror. I think probably 2 to 3 years down the road, as you say.
I mean, it's been a while too since we've had like a bunch of like virus or disease movies. I mean, I really think that like it kind of tapered down after AIDS stopped leaving the public consciousness. So I'm imagining that we're going to be seeing a glut, whether or not it's, zombie related, vampire related, just actual movies about killer diseases kind of stuff coming in a year or two.
So I don't really want to get away from Suspiria, but I mean, there isn't much more to say to it. And I want to kind of get to this little nugget in my head while I'm thinking of it. So, to change gears slightly, I just started watching The Stand last night because I'm going to do a 4-part blog on The Stand, And one thing I was thinking about was, like, epidemic films and how most epidemic films, they start off really strong and they get worse. They don't get worse, but, they're not as powerful, as potent as it was in the beginning. And I really thought to myself, is there any kind of zombie or epidemic film that got stronger as it went? Can you think of any?
You mean like the situation or just the movie as a whole?
The movie as a whole, like, if you think of like 28 days or 28 weeks later, like the beginning scenes are so good, and it's not that the end scenes are bad, they're just not as good as the opening scenes.
Yeah, it's for most of them I think it's because they change themes throughout. Like 28 days later it's less about the disease and more like what separates somebody put into a violent and desperate situation from one of the infected.
I thought of one film that I thought actually got stronger as it went, and although it's kind of like to say the name is to reveal like the whole purpose of the film, but screw it, if you haven't seen it by now, shame on you. A film called Contracted. Like, have you seen that?
Yeah, it's almost like a different kind of thing though, because like the disease really doesn't even really start to hit until the end of it.
Well, I guess.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from.
It's one of the only ones that actually peaks though at the end versus like most epidemics. The films tend to peak in the beginning, even.
I don't know what you think about Doomsday. I mean, that's kind of just all over the place as a movie, but
I've never seen it.
It's hard to judge because it almost bounces through genres. Goes from like zombie movie to cannibal holocaust to there's a scene where she's actually fighting dudes dressed as knights with like morning stars and swords and shit. So I mean,
it sounds like there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, there is. I don't know. It wasn't a bad movie. It definitely had some gruesome deaths and shit, but I don't know. Yeah. I don't know, maybe Philadelphia.
Well, that is it's a hell of a choice right there. I don't know, Stakeland.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, if we're considering vampirism as a disease, then yeah, Stakeland.
I mean,
pretty much nails it. Stakeland 2, not so much, but the first one, yeah.
I mean, Stakeland kind of gives like the whole epidemic vibe so to speak, even though it is vampirism. I mean, kind of stretching the limits of things here, but I don't know.
What do you think about like the Dawn of the Dead remake?
Okay, so that was the thing, because it starts off so good. Actually, does that movie really dip in quality much throughout?
No, but I think like one of my favorite parts is the ending when you see that they've gotten to the island and it's already overrun, and you know that they're all probably going to die.
Yeah, it's so... It starts off really strong, and it stays pretty strong throughout, and then it ends super strong, which is kind of rare in most movies. Most movies don't have such strong beginnings and endings. That movie
So
did.
when people talk shit about Zack Snyder, I just like to point them to that one.
I don't care if I'm in the minority. I actually like a lot of Zack Snyder's films, so whatever.
There's a reason why I like You Can't, and it's not just because you like Zack Snyder.
I don't know how much I believe of that, but alright. So, if we go back to The Stand for a moment, let me tell you, I learned a couple of things. I did not know that Jeff Goldblum was in it.
Who the hell was he? I'm trying to remember, but
When Larry...
it's been a long time since I've seen it.
So, this is all in part one, because I only watched the first part. In part one, when Larry heads back home and he finds his mom on the ground, she's caught the Captain Trips. He's listening to the radio, and Goldblum is the radio announcer. So I was just like, huh. Like, it's something you would never pick up until you actually look at the cast list. I was like, oh, okay. And another one that kind of... It's funny now because his character's name is actually Joe Bob, but Joe Bob Briggs is in it. Like, and horror fans know who Joe Bob Briggs is. I mentioned this to a couple of friends, and they're just like, "Who?" And I'm like, "I hate you."
The main thing I remember from the Stand was, basically it was like the reintegration into Hollywood for Molly Ringwald and Rob Lowe.
And God, I go really in depth. My blog is probably twice as long as it needs to be, as expected, but I just cannot give Molly Ringwald a break in that. I hated her performance, and she was the only one that I really hated performance in that film.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but yeah, I don't remember really being appreciably excited by her. I remember I liked Rob Lowe's character. I was sad when, spoilers if you've never seen a fucking, 20-some-odd-year-old movie at this point?
It was back in 94, so yeah.
Yeah, that he dies. I remember hating Parker Lewis. I forgot what the fuck that dude's name was, so...
Harold.
He obviously did a good enough job to make me hate him. And I remember, kind of being just blah about, Gary Sinise and Molly Ringwald as kind of the main characters. Or at least two of the main focused characters.
Yeah, I mean, Stu is arguably the main character, or at least one of the three main characters. It depends on perspective, but it's funny because I was thinking, when I saw Forrest Gump in the theater, I was already like, holy shit, Stu Redman, which is kind of weird to think back, because, I mean, Gary Sinise is known as Lieutenant Dan more than anything else, I'm willing to guess. So, but for me, yeah, he was Stu Redman. And we have made a drink with some Stewart's energy drinks and some vodka. And since the energy drinks come in a red can, we call them Stu Redmans. So, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. So, yeah, that was my whole stand. I figure after the podcast, I'll get through at least the next part. One thing I don't appreciate on Vudu is that they do not break it up in parts. It's just one large 6-hour chunk. Not cool.
Yeah. Well, if you have nothing more to say on the Stand, coming from me, chronologically speaking, outside of Suspiria, the very next movie I saw after, and it was actually the last movie I saw in 2019, in the theaters, was Dr. Sleep. I don't know if have you seen it yet?
I have not. I purchased it, and it's one of the things I want to get done over the next 2 weeks, but no. But if you want to go into non-spoiler territory, go for it.
I liked it a lot, and I appreciate what they were able to accomplish in this movie by linking the book and the movie versions of The Shining together without necessarily compromising either one.
Didn't Stephen King even like Doctor Sleep? I think he gave it like his approval or his nod or whatever.
Yes, yeah, he did. They did, so like, I'm really kind of liking Mike Flanagan a lot, the director.
Mike Flanagan, that's a name that I know, and when I look him up, I'm like, oh yeah, I know that guy, but right now I can't think of what else he's done.
Oculus.
Sold.
Gerald's Game. And to get into another thing I watched after that was The Haunting of Hill House.
Was that was a film on Netflix, right? Or a TV show?
It was a TV series on Netflix, yeah.
Okay.
But, I mean, to go back to Dr. Sleep, spoiler-free, they did a really good job of meshing it. If you're like a serious book enthusiast, they changed a bunch of shit, and they actually made the movie darker and more depressing than the way the book ends. They left out some of the fan service, I guess you would say, that the book had to The Shining, which I don't necessarily think it makes it a worse movie, but I don't think it would have. I think it would have made it a better movie if it had been in there, but I don't think it necessarily would like detract from somebody who's never read the book watching it.
Fair enough. I mean, goddamn, if I was going to talk about this later, but I may as well just say, since we're talking about a sequel, when we do the podcast again, people, we are going to be reviewing our top 10 list of sequels in horror franchises, because that's practically a sequel to Shining, right?
Oh yeah, I mean it's official sequel to Shining. I mean, look at the poster.
The poster is badass. And let me have a moment to rant here, because when I moved, I was supposed to get a couch, and the couch didn't fit. But one of the things I had in my Amazon cart before everything went to hell was actual pillows that matched the carpet or rug in the original Shining. So, really bummed out about that. That's my rant.
That sucks.
It's a bummer, right?
Yeah, it is actually. I'm trying to think. I know there was something in between Dr. Sleep and The Haunting of Hill House, but the next thing that I can remember was watching The Haunting of Hill House with my wife, and dude, if you haven't seen it, it ends a little weak, but it had some of the creepiest shit I've seen in years, and it was on a Netflix show rather than a movie. A lot of the stuff that's like sidebarred or like in the background in the first couple episodes like totally matters. So like if you're not paying deep attention, you can miss some stuff, but like when you see it and you're like, holy shit, the way they tied that in is awesome. Really good cast, really strong performances, really well written, really well shot. And I have no idea what they're doing for season 2, which is supposed to come out within the next couple of months.
Well, I mean, pretty much everything's, as far as I can tell, it seems like everything's pretty much pushed back, which seems like a great opportunity for TV shows that didn't quite get the nod for network television to be like, yeah, go ahead, air. Like, I mean, that's kind of where we're at, right? Like,
yeah, I think so. I mean, like, as far as I know, almost every single thing that was shooting has canceled, production. So we're in hiatus for some stuff. Some stuff that had already finished is, going to be released on time or, released in alternate situations, if it was an actual movie. But
I mean, shit, man. We're waiting on the season finale of Walking Dead, which is a bummer for me. But, like, how many do you think we're going to see a rise in films that just, instead of going direct to like Vudu and digital platforms, that they may just try to sell their rights to Netflix? Do you think that's a thing that's going to happen?
I think we'll see both. I mean, a lot of it's going to depend on, how stock goes, but I'm assuming, and again, I haven't looked, Netflix has to be doing reasonably well in what the situation is compared to, say, somebody like, Disney, who, 4 or 5 months ago were one of the strongest stocks you could hedge on, and now, look, Apple's trying to buy them because they're losing so much money with all the theme parks closed, all their movies delayed, all that kind of shit. Yeah, I mean, like, if you look at, like, individual things, like Supernatural, right? It's in the last season of the show. They haven't been able to finish filming the last 3 episodes. Everything else is going to be released on time, but the last 3 are going to be, just floating until they can get back into shooting.
So it's basically Walking Dead territory because,
Yeah.
I mean, they were supposed to launch the new spin-off, The World Beyond, but now that's not... Everything just got pushed back, and I think we're going to see a very... Not only are we going to have an interesting summer, we're going to have a very interesting fall because the things that we normally expect in the fall, like all my shows are in, like, start in September and October. That's not going to be a thing this year, I can't imagine.
The only thing I can think that networks might do and try to recoup some of their losses is maybe not do like the midwinter hiatus like they do for a lot of those shows. Not stop like a week after Thanksgiving and pick back up after New Year's, but like run through that entire time and try to catch up, as it were. I don't know. I can't speak for what's going to happen because who knows? I mean, we could still be in lockdown 6 months from now.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, if say by September we're off of lockdown, do you think that it's going to be wise to try to strut out new TV shows, or are people just going to be sick of staying in?
I don't think they're going to have a choice. I mean, what are the networks that rely on selling ads going to do for, hey, you want to spend, the same 1.2 million on putting an ad in for our rerun show versus our brand new one that we're hoping is going to make millions of dollars with our Nielsen ratings?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a wrestling fan, and we just had the very first empty arena of WrestleMania, and dude, it is such a weird experience and endeavor. I don't even have words for it. I mean, they even did some like cinematic type stuff, which was cool as hell, actually. And I just read yesterday that Dana White from UFC has like acquired the rights to some island, and they're bringing fighters in and just doing a ton of events from this random island. That's where we're at. Random islands.
I mean, everything's so uncertain. I mean, I'm gonna go out there and just throw this out to the world, but my wife and I have tickets to go see Nickelback in August, and like, I have no idea if I should just cancel them now or wait until it gets a little bit closer and see if they're actually going to be able to put on a concert.
And even if they are you going to want to risk it?
I mean, it obviously, if the situation is still dangerous, we wouldn't go, but if everything's cleared up in another 4.5 months, we would see. But I mean, just I really feel for people in the entertainment industry right now. I mean, I feel for our whole country. I've had discussions about this. This is probably a little deeper than we need to go in our podcast, but moving into an almost entirely service-based economy. When something like this happens, what do the people who are non-necessary services do?
I mean, let's be real. This has been the topic of conversation for damn near everybody for close to a month now. So, like, I mean, I think people expected us to at least touch on the topic. So, yeah, it's just a really, really weird situation. And, yeah, the whole service-based thing. Dude, I haven't, aside from taking out the garbage, I haven't been outside and left my apartment in over 2 weeks. It's Friday will mark week 3. So, that's where I'm at. But this is like my normal life too, simultaneously.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I was more exciting, but like all I've done for the last 3 months, 3.5 months, is go to work, go to the gas station when I get low on gas, and go home. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, what else? I mean, all right. So here's a question because I don't have many friends that are still working much. Like, are you happy to at least be in a job that's considered essential enough to keep going?
I mean, yes and no. Like, if I had a job that would pay me to stay home, I would, you know, I don't know, I wouldn't love my life. My son's been off of school for the last 2 months now, and my wife's going insane, and I probably would be right there with her. But, if, I'm kind of glad that I'm still able to work, because at least it breaks up the monotony. They're talking about potentially, depending upon what the situation happens, if anybody in our plant gets affected, locking us in which case I would love it because the money would shoot through the roof at that point.
That would be some crazy ass money. Yeah. That whew. Like, so where you are, like, I mean, I'm in New York. We all know what the hell's going on in New York, but fortunately I'm 3.5 hours away from that fucking mess. But Florida, how's it doing down there?
The last time I looked, and this was a day or two ago, like the numbers, you guys were at like 140,000 cases, and we were at like 13. So, I mean, we were one of the higher states, but, from what I was looking at over the entire United States, it's like New York's number one, New Jersey's number two. You have a maybe like a dozen, 15 or so states that are like 10 to 15,000. And then the majority of the states with smaller populations, more rural populations, more spread out, and who got on top of it earlier, are looking at like 1,000 cases to like 100 cases each. My county 2 days ago had 110 cases total, and only 5 deaths. And all of those 5 deaths were people who were 66 plus. So, I'm sad that anybody died, but that's relatively good stats for my county's a couple 100,000 people. To compare it to Fulton or Montgomery County in New York.
Yeah, no, those numbers are good, all things considering. Like, it's weird to say the word good, but I mean, in this relative, like, let's face it, I think everybody kind of gets it. Like, good isn't good, but good is better than it could be.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, dude, I live in like this apartment complex. Like, there's 6 apartment buildings, and it's almost entirely people over 65. So I'm just like sitting here, like, I'm waiting. Like, I know that probably sounds a little fucked up, but like, I'm legit waiting.
And my mom just moved back up to Gloversville, like end of January, middle of February, somewhere around there. And she's like, God, I picked the wrong fucking time to move to New York.
How I don't know. This is probably a horrible question. Is your mom in the bad range?
Yeah, she's early 60s, mid 60s. I mean, depending upon what you consider 64. Okay. But I mean, there's health issues on top of it. So.
Yeah, I mean, my mom's 71, and I just talked to her yesterday, and she's like, I think I'm going to go to the store. I'm like, okay. She's like, I really haven't been out in 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, I get it. I'd prefer that you just do curbside pickup, but she's hell-bent, like, trying to traverse Walmart for whatever reason. So I'm like, you do
your mask, wear gloves, disinfect everything.
She's like, I don't have a mask. I'm like, then you really should just do curbside. But old people are very stubborn. I think, as everybody listening knows, like, the older you get, the more stubborn you get, because it's just like, whatever, I'm old, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and what are you going to do about it?
Definitely. So, I mean, it could definitely be worse. And I mean, if you take every precaution that you can, and you get checked up if you start exhibiting symptoms, and you make sure you get to the hospital, it's definitely treatable.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping that the hysteria has died down a little bit, because for what, like a couple weeks, the hysteria and the toilet paper supply and all that, like, everything was just royally effed up. And I'm hoping that we're coming to a little bit where everybody's got at least some knowledge of the situation. So hopefully we can shut this shit down. And yeah. And by the way, I know this kind of like, you went to the Nickelback thing. I also went to a Nickelback concert, and I'm not even a Nickelback fan, but they put on a really good concert. So I'll give them credit.
I will straight up say to the internet, I am a Nickelback fan. I've liked them ever since their first album, The State, came out. My wedding song was a Nickelback song. So
please don't tell me it was Photograph.
No, it's Far Away.
Okay.
So you guys can suck it. They get an unfair rep. But, they are kind of derivative with all of their stuff. I mean,
yeah,
I was listening to their stuff and I was like, God, I know all their songs, but I can't remember some of them, like which album they came off of.
I mean, people trash everything. Like, I can't believe how many people still trash Metallica. I'm like, wow, so nothing good from Metallica's come out since the Black Album per some people. And I'm just like, what are you listening to? Because, like, it's nonsense. It's just straight up nonsense.
Dude, I don't understand that because I love S&M. That was a fucking great album.
I liked Reload. I liked, I think I actually liked Death Magnetic. I know a lot of people didn't, but I liked that album. I liked their last album. I usually like Metallica. Like, I like all variations, and the S&M was a great album. I enjoy them.
I'll say this. I like individual songs off of every Metallica album. But one of the things that I like more is more, not necessarily more recent, but like, say from And Justice for All on, like once James Hetfield started taking like singing lessons and actually learning like how to sing, I think their musicality improved as a whole. Not necessarily their instrumentation, because they rocked hard on some of their earlier shit, but like, as a vocalist, if I'm listening to a song, I like to be able to sing and enjoy the music, not just enjoy the music, and sing along with it.
I would absolutely agree with you, because there's some music that I'm like, even if I like the music, I can't handle the singer screaming in my freaking ears. I'm like, it's not for me. And I'm not judging anybody. I'm just saying it's not for me. I think that's fair. So, I didn't think we'd actually get into a music conversation. That's something we rarely do unless we're talking about soundtracks.
We're free roaming. I can't remember what the fuck else I've watched since the last time we talked. I know there was a couple other things, but I don't know. I did see Joker. I mean, I don't know how much you would classify that as a horror movie, but I definitely think it did a good job of. I liked it as a movie overall. I just thought it was a good movie, but I think it did a good job of really kind of like putting mental health issues into a /superhero movie. I almost saw it like a mix between Walking or Falling Down and the Kings of Comedy. I don't know, but I thought it was really good. I thought Joaquin did a great performance in that.
I've made the argument that I thought Joaquin's performance was one of the 3 best performances I've seen since Ed Norton in American History X. So that's like a 20-year span, and I'm willing to say that's one of the top 3 performances I've seen. I just thought he fucking owned that character and just nailed it on every single level of nailing an iconic character, nonetheless. Like, obviously it's a little easier if you have a character that's new to everybody, but I mean, you take a character that's known and to make it your own, there's a challenge to that. And
I'm trying to think of a single movie that he's ever done that I haven't enjoyed him in, and I can't think of one.
No. Joaquin is consistently great. Even if the film may not be great, it's kind of like, Willem Dafoe. When does he give a bad performance? There's just certain people out there that always, I don't know, seem to knock it out of the park. But Joaquin's just, I mean, without Joaquin, Signs probably isn't as good of a movie.
Oh, definitely. Swing away, Meryl.
Yeah, Joaquin is the greatest villain I've ever seen in a film. I'll go that far and say his role in Gladiator was the only time I'm sitting there like, I really hate this guy for all the reasons that are implied for me to hate this guy.
Yeah, I mean, shit, I remember seeing him in Inventing the Abbots back in the day. Incidentally, I love Billy Crudup as an actor too, so just the two of them together. And then yeah, it was just a good movie. You know,
Billy's great, man. He's so good. I haven't seen him in forever, though. I feel like
he does a lot of Broadway. I mean, the last thing that I remember really seeing him in was Spotlight.
I don't even know what that is.
That was the one about the newspaper in Boston who uncovered the story about the Catholic Church recycling the priests out of the parishes after they had molested kids, but not ever like removing them from their positions.
Gotcha. I'm looking him up. He's in the new TV show, The Morning Show, which I've heard was good, but I haven't seen it. But I'm just like, I just pulled him up on IMDb, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, Big Fish is what I know him best for, but Almost Famous and, Watchmen, like, god damn, he's got a good variety to him.
Big blue penis, yes.
Yeah, that's super important.
Oh, Alien Covenant, I forgot. He was in that, too.
I still haven't seen that.
I'm not gonna lie, I haven't seen it either.
I think that's the only. Wait, no, I didn't see Prometheus. Whether you consider that part of the Alien franchise or not, I believe it is, right?
Yeah.
I think it's. I don't know. I will consider it. So I haven't seen either of those two films, but that's all right. Anything else you saw that you want to chit chat about?
I'm trying to remember. Like, I watched Watchmen. I know you watched that because I remember you discussing it on your blog. Did you actually do a podcast for it?
Just did the blog because it was just me and Jim and another guy named Chris who has just gone completely AWOL. Like, like he used to do like a lot of my stuff, and then like he disappeared the final episode of Watchmen, and I have not heard a single solitary thing from him since then. Like, it's weird. He went dark.
Yeah. Hopefully everything's okay.
I see him on Facebook, like on Messenger sometimes, but that, like, I don't know. I don't want to get like into like weird things or anything. I just haven't heard from him, so I don't know what's going on. But I wish him the best. I liked his input. But regarding Watchmen, I truly love the show. I'm very disappointed that we're not getting a second one, but I will also say that if the second one was not going to be up to the first one's standards, I'm cool with it just being an 8 or 9 episode thing. Like, I'm cool with that.
See, part of me liked it. Part of me thought it was something that was like necessary and should be talked about. But then, like, the fan in me is like, you take something that somebody created and you just twist it to add your own like political spin into it, even if it's one that I agree with. I'm like, why couldn't you tell the story without subverting somebody else's characters?
No, it's a valid point.
It leaves me torn because I did like the series, but at the same time I'm like, I just kind of feel like you're shitting all over like the things that Alan Moore gave us.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. It was weird because normally I'm like the type of person that all up in arms, like really pissed off that feelings or like perspectives and shit like is added to a TV show or a film. But in this case, like early on, it kind of irked me, and then by the end, I was just like, whatever. I'm having a good time, and I don't know. I don't think I'd watched many good TV shows last year, so I think I was more open-minded and willing to accept things I might not normally accept.
Yeah, I'm torn on it, but I would definitely recommend people to watch it and at least make their decision for themselves.
And Jeremy Irons was amazing.
Yeah, I love Jeremy Irons. I mean, it's the same kind of thing with Westworld. Like I look at like the themes and the stories that they're trying to tell within this new show, and no matter how good it is, I'm like, you're taking something that Michael Crichton wrote, who's just one of my, I don't want to say idols, but I really enjoyed the fact that he tried to at least address some hard science within his science fiction, and you're taking something that he wrote and created, and you're adding stuff that completely he never even covered in that. So I mean, it's one thing to like take something and expand on it, but it's another to use somebody else's work to throw out your political agenda. Again, even if I agree with it, it just feels like you're using somebody else's name to get your message out there.
All right, so I had a conversation. This is kind of on topic here. I have a friend who recently watched Get Out, probably about a month ago. Contact me, very against my perspective, blah, blah, blah. Whatever, that was fine. It was, nothing too aggressive here. But what we kind of came to the conclusion is that he's a big fan of movies with messages or TV shows, I guess. And me personally, I don't. I know horror is well renowned for having their messages, but honestly, I watch horror for the horror of it. I don't give a damn about the messages. Where do you fall in that spectrum?
Well, I think messages are important and they should be shared. Like my problem is when say for example, say Alfred Hitchcock made Get Out in the 1960s. And then the Jordan Peele one was a remake that had everything that it had in it. I would have a problem with it then if his version hadn't followed the same themes that Alfred Hitchcock's did. Or for a more recent version of this, look at the remake of Black Christmas and how they retain the same basic plot but completely shit all over the majority of the story and the script in order to just throw their message out there.
Did you even see that? Because I avoided it like the plague.
I haven't watched it because I've watched enough in-depth reviews, and I actually watched a review where they showed a good 15 minutes of the movie. And from seeing that 15 minutes, I'm like, yeah, they put the message ahead of trying to make a good movie.
Was it you that sent me a YouTube clip that with the guy that reviewed it quite thoroughly?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I have watched a couple, but I don't think I sent you any.
Somebody did, and it turned me completely off from the film, which I was initially excited for.
Yeah, I was too. I was like, wow, we were just talking about this, and they announced that they're doing a remake. And then again, on the other hand, as one of the people I saw review it brought up, anytime that they're completely making a movie from pre-production to post-production within 6 months, probably not going to be the greatest movie ever.
Yeah, that tells me that they are not taking their time. Which I get. Filming, sometimes you really need to get in and out, or else, people are gonna be like, I can't do this because of my schedule. I get that. Scheduling's a bitch when you try to do films, man. But it really doesn't sound like it. Sounds like the E.T. the video gamed the hell out of that film.
Probably. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we find a whole bunch of copies in an trash dump out somewhere in the future. Buried, and people are digging them out and putting them into shrines in museums and stuff.
I could see that, absolutely. I mean, E.T. was the first game my parents got me for Christmas from the Atari. They didn't know better.
Well, I mean, everybody loved E.T. I was one of the exceptions, but
Oh, it was the first movie I saw in the theater, man.
See, the first movie I saw in the theater, even though I was too young to remember it, was Empire. So that's probably, defined me a lot in regards to what I enjoy as a movie.
Makes sense. Yeah, I was way too young to really remember E.T., but I've seen images, pictures that my parents took, and I have all kinds of E.T. stuff. I even have a E.T. punching bag thing, man. I apparently was all about E.T. back in the day.
I think it's funny because I talk to my parents, and my dad is relatively into the same stuff I am, maybe not so much as much horror, and he goes more into B movies. But my mom's tastes have definitely changed to the point where like she just really loves like happy movie. You know, it's got to be happy. Whereas like me, I think I appreciate the more grimdark stuff than I do, you know, happy stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong. I see a good comedy. I still laugh my ass off, but
Yeah, no, my mom went through the same thing over the past 15, 20 years where, like, her and I used to sit down. She's the one that got me into horror movies. And, like, we would watch them a lot until, like, the mid-2000s. And then, like, she just stopped enjoying them aside from Storm of the Century. Like, I can't get her to watch a horror movie. She's one of those people that will watch, like, Christmas in July on Hallmark Channel or some shit. And I'm just like, what's happened to you? Like, it's very weird.
yeah, like you know, I try to talk my mom into watching Hannibal. I'm like, that was literally my favorite fucking show on TV. And no, I won't do it. It's yeah. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I mean, I'm trying to think of what else. Like I saw Knives Out. Not really, you know, topical, but I like the movie. I wanted to hate it just because Ryan Johnson did it, and I fucking hated what he did with Star Wars. But it was a okay movie.
Knives Out seems to be very divided among, like, I've had some people go so far as be like, that's the best film of the year, and some people absolutely freaking hated it. And unfortunately, I had one thing spoiled, so now I know who the bad guy is, which pisses me off because it wasn't even by name. It had to do with phones. So
Gotcha. It was entertaining. I mean, it's definitely worth watching. I don't think it was anywhere near the best movie of the year because, like, recently I finally saw 1917, and I put both that and Joker up over Knives Out. So
I pre-ordered 1917. I haven't seen that, and I still haven't seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So,
incidentally, I just saw that the other day too, and I really enjoyed that. I thought like I could really feel like some critics or some and reviewers were saying that it's a love letter from Tarantino to like classic Hollywood.
it looks amazing, and it came out at a really bad time for me. So I just haven't sat down. Actually, what happened, and I am ashamed to admit this. Before I watched that, I was like, I really need to watch Hateful Eight because I started watching that one day and I fell asleep and I never got back to it. So I can finally say that I finished Hateful Eight. So now I just got to get through this one. And Tarantino's like my favorite director. I don't know what's wrong with me.
I loved Hateful Eight. Yeah, it took a while for me to finally find a copy and watch it after it came out, but I really enjoyed it. I love both of his westerns. I think he did a really good job working in that genre. Here's this little anecdotal story. I got into a fight with my wife right before we started watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and like we had to take an hour break before we could talk to each other again. But I was trying to explain to her, you know, like where the whole title came from because she was like, "I've seen Once Upon a Time in Mexico." I'm like, "Yeah, but that's not where it came from."
Yeah, because I ordered the other two, Once Upon a Time in America, and before that, what was it, Once Upon a Time in the West, right?
Yeah, there was Once Upon a Time in America, Once Upon a Time in the West. You know, and you know the whole Once Upon a Time thing is reminiscent of fairy tales. You know, that's
Right.
so. You know, I'm trying to explain to her. You know, like the whole idea is that these movies are not like truth. They're supposed to be like an archetypical representation of like a fairy tale version of what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And, you know, eventually she let me explain that to her, and then it made sense when we got to the end, and I was explaining to her, you know, this is the difference between what happened in the movie and what happened in real life.
I see when I got Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I got it as part of a buy two, get three free. So I actually ordered Once Upon a Time in the West, Once Upon a Time in America, and then Hollywood. And I haven't watched any of those three yet, but that's going to be a busy day when I do.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
One thing, I gotta go back to Hateful Eight for a second because the same dude did the score for that did The Thing and obviously some other stuff. I like there was just this one little scene that like was very right from The Thing when they were outside in the snow and they were planting the stakes and the rope. I was like, that's a little nod to The Thing. I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, dude, I really enjoyed that movie. Like, the fucking characters were fucking
Oh,
all assholes in that fucking movie.
Walton Goggins, man, that guy is so goddamn good, and yet he's on some show on CBS that I refuse to watch.
Dude, I'm gonna tell you this straight up. I never watched Sons of Anarchy with my wife. She's watched it like the whole thing like 3 or 4 times, and she was rewatching it again today. And I caught part of the episode where like Walton Goggins was playing either the tranny or the crossdresser.
Venus, yeah.
And like I don't know how they did those breasts to make him look so realistic. Like I was like, damn. I was like, he's got some nice boobs.
They did. I mean, he did a wonderful job. They did a wonderful job with the show, and yeah, like I haven't gotten around to see Justified, and once again,
That's the first thing that I saw him in, and so that's where I know him from. And like she's first saw him in Sons of Anarchy, so when I was trying to get her to watch Justified, all she could think of is like, oh my god, the villain is Venus.
I think my first time of seeing Goggins might have actually been House of a Thousand Corpses, but I didn't really know who he was at the time.
Yeah, I mean, and he's not in it for like super long either.
No, he just has like the longest death ever. But yeah, it's kind of I don't want to say a throwaway, but it really is kind of it's a smaller scene in the grand scheme of that film. So yeah, I do want to see more Walton Goggins, and he really fit like Tarantino. Like I don't know. I love when you can actually see the people fit inside of a Tarantino film. Like, I mean, Samuel L. Jackson's a natural, but I mean, there's just some people that just do it. Uma Thurman's a great example because I see other Uma Thurman stuff and I'm just not into it. But with her in Tarantino, like, it just clicks for me.
Dude, I loved in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like, they do a couple of scenes with Leo, where he's on set filming something, and they're just really good. Like, you'll know when you see it. Like, I don't want to say it's the same kind of tension, but it reminded me of like Inglourious Bastards, like the scene in the basement in the bar.
Oh yeah, that scene's great.
Or the scene at the beginning, with the Christoph Waltz talking to the guy in the house, oh, can you get me a glass of milk? Kind of,
The tension, yeah, that.
And there wasn't the tension there because it wasn't a scene like that. I mean, it's a scene about an actor doing a scene and like forgetting his lines and trying to get the part down and everything. But
when I think of tense scenes, I still don't think I can think of a more tense scene than Training Day.
Oh, dude, yeah, that's a good movie. I mean, Anton Fuqua had a couple misses, more hits than misses, but yeah, that's a movie that like I forget about a lot because I shouldn't, because Denzel and Ethan Hawke both gave really good performances in it, but yeah, it's fucking still holds up.
As I get older, Ethan Hawke impresses me more and more. Like, my appreciation for Ethan Hawke over the past decade has grew immensely because I guess I just missed a lot of his stuff, but I really like him as an actor.
He was a good actor as a kid, and he's gotten better. Like, well, I don't know. Have you ever watched the Celebrities Read Mean Tweets on Jimmy Kimmel?
Oh, I've seen it a few times, but yeah.
There's one where Ethan Hawke's doing it, and his was like, oh, Ethan Hawke seems like that kind of guy who is like, we just kind of let slip through the cracks, and we're like, oh, okay.
Fair enough.
But he really is a good actor. Like, there've been a couple times where he's gone like outside of his comfort rating, and I'm like, I don't know if this is necessarily like I don't see him being like an action star. But he's been in some of my favorite dramas ever, and one of my favorite horror movies ever. So.
Yeah, I mean, and I can't even fault him for the first Purge film, even though that one may be my least favorite. Which is,
yeah, I mean, it's definitely my least favorite, but he wasn't bad in it.
Isn't it funny that that's by far the most star-studded and it's the worst? Like, horror franchises, typically the first film is not the worst, but it's arguably the worst with The Purge.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think they were working on a small budget, which is why it was so constrained.
Yeah, I mean, and I still enjoy it. It's just I really think that they once they got to the sequel, they just improved upon the ideology of it. They and Frank Grillo, love that man.
Yeah, I would say Frank Grillo is definitely an underrated fucking, not necessarily B movie actor, but yeah, B lister in Hollywood. I like a lot of the shit that he's done.
Absolutely. So, what else have you seen? Or are you kind of running out of steam on what you've seen?
I'm getting close, but my wife watched The Invisible Man. I have not seen it, but she said it was really good, and from everything that I've seen, it looks like they're doing a pretty good job of making The Invisible Man into an actual decent horror concept compared to, like, say, a Hollow Man version.
I just posted yesterday, one of the writers for the website, technically he sent it like 3 weeks ago, and I was like, yeah, I'll put it up tomorrow, and then I forgot, so yesterday became, 3 week later tomorrow, and based on his review, I only read halfway into it because I didn't know if he got into spoilers, and I don't read too much until I've seen a film, so like it's hard to even edit something like that. But I just avoid reading. I just look for mistakes. But it sounded really good, and it sounded a little bit like a film that nobody knows, but it's called 100 Feet with Famke Janssen. It sounded similar to that. Have yours?
I couldn't tell you because like you said, nobody knows, and I'm part of that nobody.
Basically, she's under house arrest, and her husband that she killed or whatever is like haunting. So like his presence is there and just messing her up like the whole film. It's an interesting idea. That's all I got for you.
Interesting. And then the last thing I will say, and I have not finished it, so I don't know how it ends. My wife did, and she watched enough of it to get me interested. Was again circling back to Stephen King, The Outsider, on HBO.
I haven't. That's something. That's another day of just sitting there mindlessly in front of my TV. I need to see it.
It looked interesting from the start, but I was like, this kind of looks like derivative of a lot of other stuff. And then she got into it far enough, and I caught part of it, like getting ready for work, and I saw where they were actually going with it. I'm like, okay, this is unique.
Yeah, and Bateman's in it, correct?
Yeah. He actually directed a couple episodes too, which he's definitely come a long way from being fucking what's his name in the Hogan family.
Was it Mike or Jason? I feel like was his name. But yeah, I mean, Bateman's had one hell of a great career resurrection. Good for him.
Definitely, he's definitely fucking funny, man. I mean, like, there are a couple of his comedies that like I don't like as much as others, but like, I love Office Christmas Party. We just rewatched that recently.
I'm always tempted to see it. I'm so judgmental when it comes to modern day comedies, but I will tell you, and hell, I think I've had to watch this since we last talked. I did watch the film Tag, and I really loved that movie. Like, I laughed like 5 to 8 times, and I normally don't laugh that much at modern day comedies.
That's one I haven't seen, but yeah, it looks funny as shit. And with that, outside of going into a couple trailers for stuff coming up in the future, which I know you wanted to talk about too, I think I have petered out over what I've done over the last couple months. Oh, no, one more thing. I know we don't really talk about video games too much on this site, or podcast, but I just played a demo for one coming out in a couple of weeks. The demo's actually like a level from the game, but it's not in the game. It's like they took the assets and the gameplay and threw it into a new, like, details. But it was called Hellpoint, the Thespian Feast. The actual game's just called Hellpoint. But it reminded me as if you took a cross between Dark Souls and Dead Space and mixed them together.
Ooh.
Which I thought was really interesting.
That's a good combination. That's a really good combination. Is it on console or just PC?
From what I understand, because I had a buddy who kickstarted it back in the day, it's eventually going to be on the consoles and PC. But for whatever reason, the PC release is coming out on April 16th, and the consoles have been pushed back some indeterminate amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, anything that's been pushed back is basically pushed back for a question mark. So that sounds good. I actually just downloaded a demo myself, but then I haven't played it because it's the new Resident Evil game, and it's basically Dead by Daylight. It sounds like, only with Resident Evil. I'm like, okay.
Is that like the multiplayer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to like it because I don't really care much for Dead by Daylight, despite it having all these horror icons that I love. I just don't...
I look at that game and I see like how cool it would look to play it, and then I read the reviews and people talking about how toxic the community is, and
Exactly.
like, how easy it is to get around it just by playing with like people in, like Discord or Xbox Party or something, where you can talk with people without being in the game. Yeah.
I mean, the community is what ruined the Friday the 13th game, plus the lawsuit. But I mean, that community ruined that game long before the lawsuit. Like, that community was... toxic's a nice word. That community was absolutely horrific, to the point where I was just like, nope, I'm just playing with bots, or I'm doing like the little missions. I'm not playing with other people. It was awful.
It sucks because like there's so many cool ideas for multiplayer games that end up getting ruined because people just can't work together. Like I think if I ever made a game, which I'm probably not going to because I have no idea how to code or anything like that, the only multiplayer I would put in would be co-op, because that at least encourages people to work together rather than competitive where you have to compete against each other, and that fosters the toxicity.
PvP is like the thing I don't like it. I avoid it, and people are like, well, that's just the way it is nowadays. I'm like, okay, then I'm just not going to do it. Like, I'll play games that are either single player or can do co-op, but I'm not doing it anymore because everybody is either whiny little bitch that ruins everything, they drop out, or they just are irritating and they just take advantage of like the mechanics. I'm like, none of this is fun to me. And I have friends that don't understand why that's not fun. I'm like, I don't understand how this would be fun. It doesn't make sense to me. I'd much rather play Dungeon Defenders or goddamn, there's so many games, but even like Resident Evil 5, man, was great because I had co-op. I grew up playing co-op, and I still play co-op. Castle Crashers is still a fun game, despite it being like 15 years old at this point, I think.
Dude, Castle Crashers is great.
Yeah?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, like, I play a lot of Smite, and I try every time I start playing to be positive over, playing with other people. But any kind of game where you have to rely on a team, if that team's not working together, and of course, when you're playing with 5 randos, you're not going to be working together as efficiently as like 5 people who are used to working together can. It's not going to go as well. Sometimes you have great matches, sometimes you don't. But the fact that people's first instinct is to just lay down and start talking shit to each other instead of, working to try to improve, somebody's play is what really pisses me off about stuff like that.
Eric just got me and his friend Twan. Well, I'm also friends with Twan, like playing Phantasy Star Online 2 because they have the beta open on Xbox. And what I'm finding, I do like the co-op, but if I'm playing with randos, they don't care. They just go every which way. And then I got bummed out by that. So, then I kind of just tried playing with Eric and Twan, except then it was a situation where Eric was a healer, Twan had ranged guns that decimate everything, and I'm a melee guy, and I'm like, well, either I sit here and let them do all the work, or I just venture off on my own, and both seemed like bad choices, I guess, but like, it wasn't fun to just stick with them. Because what am I going to do? If he's decimated everything from range before I even get there, what's the point of melee character?
Yeah, I gotcha. I mean, I just started playing that too. I was actually going to ask you what your opinions were because I saw you had been playing a lot more than I had. One of my buddies from work was like a big Fantasy Star Online fan, and so was I from back in the day. So
I really like it. I do, and I'm at like level 55, I think now. So I'm doing good. I'm enjoying it, but I'm gonna hit the wall sooner, like within a week or two, and then I'm gonna be done. Like,
yeah, I'll put it like this. So far, from my experience, I'm only level 15 or so. Like, I really enjoy the minute to minute gameplay, like the combat and stuff on the missions, but like the systems are as complicated as you can fucking make a series of sim systems
so
in a MMO.
so much reading, so many like trying to remember where this person, that person, and then all the missions and like, oh, you can only hold 20 missions at a time. Well, there's like 500 missions to be had.
And there's like 19 different types of quests. You know, all these different currencies, all these different vendors.
I hate different like, you know what? No more than like 3 currencies. That's it. Like that. Like enough with the currencies because it's just the game is overwhelming in a lot of ways, and for me, it being a newbie, like trying to find info about it is next to impossible because everything's from the Japanese game. So like all the names are a little different, and it's really, I don't know, it's weird. So I don't think I'm ever gonna go hit level 75. Quite frankly, I might, but like I've had the itch to go back to ESO, but I just can't pull the trigger. It's $9 to get the past 2 updates, and I still can't pull the trigger.
I almost did the other day because I saw my niece and my nephew playing, but then I was like, oh, most of the time when I'm on, they're going to be sleeping, so.
Yeah, I don't know. I still may just get the $9 update, but then I know I'm going to have to get ESO Plus to store stuff, and yada yada. So I'm like, I don't know. I'm probably more likely to buy Lego DC Villains because that's down to $22.50, which is about my sweet spot for a Lego game. So.
Well, maybe this is a good spot. Can we take a break for a minute? Since I don't know about you, but I need to use the restroom.
Yeah, we're gonna take a break, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back.